All right, well, good morning, everyone. So, as you're aware, I am not here this morning. Other two teachers and myself, we are up at the superintendent's office currently, and we're learning about some more IXL things that we can do with you and how we can use it as an advantage for you in math and hopefully in some literature. With that, we have an introduction to a story, and it's a lot of information I don't necessarily want my substitute teacher to have to work on. So hopefully they'll have a little bit easier time because all they're going to do is push play, and you're going to hopefully watch and pay attention. So we're starting with our Unit 2 topic, and our first story is called Pax. It's actually from Pax, and just a reminder that from means it's an excerpt, it's a piece taken out of a particular book. So I have put my copy of Pax up on the talk ledge so that you can see it. And you can see how many chapters. So getting into our first story, it's going to be important that we understand what our essential question is. So each of our stories in Unit 2 is going to come from the perspective of an animal or animal rights with a couple of the stories. So our main focus is going to be what can you learn by seeing the world through an animal's eyes? And for some, that's going to be fiction, and we do have some that are nonfiction as well as we go through Unit 2. Now, when we look at PAX itself, it's talking about the idea that this is a novel, right? Sometimes we just call them trade books or paperback books, but it's literally called a novel when it comes to the genre that it's in. It is a fiction novel because it is made up. When we look at what novels generally present to us, then we have that basic plot line that we talked about already in class, right? We're introduced to our main characters in our setting at the very beginning of the story. We're introduced then to what the problem is, usually on within the first chapter. And then we have our plot line. Now, as the plot line goes along, our characters are more explained and more built as we're reading. We can see the conflict increasing more and more until we get to that climax point or that solution. And we work through the entire thing. And then at the end of the story, then when we can talk about, well, what is the theme? What is that underlined message that the author wanted you to learn from it? So in PAX, we won't read the entire book, but you'll be allowed to check it out from my library. If you are interested in reading the entire book, it's once again good for AR points, especially towards that Pumpkin Palooza goal that your principals have set up for you. But we won't get the overall theme for PAX just through this one particular chapter, but there is a theme within the chapter itself that we're going to be reading. The other part of a novel is that it's longer. Right? We read The Ravine, it was a short story. We couldn't get really in depth with Vinny and understand who Vinny is, or the other characters either. So that's the nice thing about a novel is it lets us really get into who the characters are and feel empathy towards them, be interested in them, wanting the best for them as they go through their experiences. And then, of course, it talks about how we can, in a novel, have enough length in there then to really build that connection to the characters. And notice what it says at the end. It may not always be a human. So maybe as you're, predicting, maybe our story is not about a human, but maybe about a fox, or it might just be about a human that. So when we get into our main literature aspect that we're going to be talking about with PAX, we kind of had like a little brush of it with the ravine, but we didn't get into a great deal talking about the different points of view and how we know. So just a reminder, I mean, this is fourth and fifth grade when you were taught about first person point of view, and it's from a person that's inside the story, right? I'm experiencing this classroom. I'm going to write a story about what I'm seeing, what I'm doing, how I'm feeling, what Mr. Barker's teaching us. That's my own perspective of what's going on. And I'll talk about me doing something, right? Or I'll talk about we are doing something or how something affected us, right? That's all first person because I'm involved. But when I look at the ravine and I think about how that was written, we were being told what Vinny thought, right? The narrator was not a character in the story, so that was a third person point of view, and that's what third person is. The narrator is telling you a story where they can either see all of the people's emotions, thoughts, experiences, or only one particular person's thoughts, emotions, and experiences. So there's two categories there in third person. We have omniscient, or some people will say omniscient. But the omniscient point of view is I can tell you everyone's emotions in this class. I can tell you everyone's thoughts and perspectives in this class. Now, we don't have that power, right? So if it's a made up story, then that makes it much easier than trying to present that as real life. But if it's a limited, which is what we had in the ravine, I can only tell you what one main character, right? So in the ravine, we could see Vinny's thoughts, Vinny's memories, Vinny's emotions, and how he was handling things. We really didn't know what Joe Boy and the other characters were thinking, feeling, or experiencing. We could just see what they were doing from Vinny's point of view. So the way I usually teach this is I kind of use an image because I'm a visual learner. So I try to teach things not only orally, but also visually for you. So the first thing is to understand is we can tell what point of view we're talking from if I pay attention to the pronouns. And once again, nouns are person, place, or thing, right? We have the common, which are not capitalized, and proper, which are capitalized. Pronouns take the place of a noun, right? So if I say, well, Jenny went and got the mail, I could also say she went and got the mail. So Jenny would be the noun. I can replace Jenny with she. That is my pronoun. So pronouns take places of nouns. And when I use my pronouns in first person, I'm involved once again in the story. So I say I, we, right? He, she did this to me, right? So I, we, me. Second person we don't use very often. It's a very limited point of view because we're only talking about what one other person did. This is how you affected me. A lot of times it is if you had an argument, disagreement with someone, and you're writing them a text or a letter and saying, "Hey, this is what happened, and this is what you did that I'm upset about." The third person is where I can see from at least one person's point of view, right? So my pronouns are he and she and they or her or them. So when I look at how third person is set up, then I have limited and I have omniscient. So limited is I can only see one person, right? I'm standing there, I'm telling you about this story, and I've got Sally there and she's painting, and I talk about all the colors she's choosing and how happy she looks as she's being creative, right? But I can't tell you about anyone else's personal emotions and thoughts, right? So I can tell you what Sally's thinking, feeling, and seeing, but not other people's. If I'm an omniscient third person, once again, I'm the narrator, I'm outside of the story, but I can describe everyone involved, right? I can tell you what Billy and Jimmy are seeing and thinking and feeling, as well as Sally, right? I can tell you why they're all smiling and what's going through their heads. I can tell you about their conversation staying outside the picture, but how that conversation is affecting them internally. Because as an omniscient narrator, I can tell all characters' points of view, feelings, and emotions. So when we look at the two main types of third person, then we have to be able to see that there are differences, but also what the similarities are. So the differences, once again, are going to be on the outside of a Venn diagram, and the similarities are what's in the center. So on the third person limited, it's when I can describe the thoughts and feelings of only one character, right? I can tell you what they're seeing and what they're experiencing and how they're feeling, I can only describe what I'm seeing the other characters do. When I look at third person, that's omniscient, meaning I can tell you what almost all, if not all, the characters are seeing, feeling, and experiencing. What they have in common is the fact that I, as the narrator, am not in this story. I'm just a bystander. I am out on, the side of the road observing all of this happen, and I'm telling you about it. Right? So the narrator, the person telling the story, is not a character. They're just observing. This information is important, not just about the pronouns, but notice when it says I and we, that's not used because I'm not a part of this story. Right? I can only tell you about what he, she, they, them did. So both of them, no matter which perspective you're writing from, are going to be out there all on their own. They're not able to participate in the story itself. So here in a couple of minutes, as you read Pax, what I would like you to do is discuss as a group then, when you're done reading, which is it? Is Pax told from a limited third person point of view, or is it told from an omniscient third person point of view? The second part of the lesson then is looking at voice once again. And we brought this up the other day, and I told you to open it from announcements in Canvas, save it to your reading OneDrive folder so that you'd always have it. We're going to go back to this many, many, many times throughout the year. So once again, under your announcements, you'll have to scroll because they're not in the order in which I'm teaching them. It all got shuffled when I loaded them from last year's course, right? But you're looking for the one that says voice and mood. So when I talk about voice, right, I know that there's a mood that is set, and the mood is the connection of the emotion, the feeling, the experience that's happening. The voice is the words that are being used. What are the words or even the phrases that the author chooses to use to set that mood, right? Are you happy? Are you excited? Are you anxious? Are you scared? Are you worried? Are you stressed? All of those emotions are going to be established by the words that the author uses. So I want you to pay attention throughout the story because in this portion, this chapter from Pax that you're going to be reading, some of the emotions change and change rather quickly. So as you're reading as a group, I need you to pay attention to that punctuation, pay attention to the context, so that as you're reading it, you can apply the correct emotions when it's your turn to read. All right, so you're going to start on page 97, and you are going to work together on reading the story. Go around and take turns, and each person at the table continues to read. I would suggest that you read either by paragraphs or by pages. Have a great day and behave.